Tim, you know what I've been thinking about lately?
I can only imagine.
Yeah, it is ice cream, but also how we are desperately trying to hustle our way to creativity and success when maybe just think about this, because I've been thinking about it. Maybe we should just take a walk instead.
So Kurt Nelson's formula for world peace is solve all your problems with a walk?
Yeah, maybe not quite world peace and everything, but lots of our problems, maybe.
Yeah, okay. So after talking with Dr. Natalie Nixon about her new book, Move, Think, Rest, I think you might be onto something here, Kurt, actually. She is completely reframing how we approach our best work.
Yeah, and I love that. And it's not just about exercise. When she talks about movement hygiene, she's really challenging that whole grind culture that where everybody's trying to get us to buy into, right? I mean, she literally hit a burnout wall as an academic and decided that there had to be a better way. And I think it's fair to say she has pretty good ideas about it, right?
No, I agree wholeheartedly. And we had a terrific conversation with Natalie. And she believes we're in the middle of, how about this, a human revolution, not a technology revolution, not just going in circles. But here we are surrounded by AI and automation that can give us answers instantly. And her recommendation, her thought-provoking idea, is that we should be embracing more spaciousness, more spontaneousness, more be in the worldness and not just curling up with our AI companions.
That's a lot of nesses there, Tim.
It's a messy world.
Okay, so she breaks it down in a way that's not just thinking harder or working longer hours. She talks about backcasting and forecasting, really interesting conversation, looking at our memories and at metacognition. We love metacognition.
Love
using daydreaming and imagination to boost our resilience. Now, remember what her mom used to say.
What's that? What was?
Only boring people get bored.
Oh,
Now we had our conversation with Aaron Westgate, and that's a whole separate thing about boredom. But hey, I like the statement. I like the statement.
That is a line worth stealing, I got to admit. But seriously, what I love about Natalie's book is that this isn't just another self-help productivity hack. It's a really thoughtful frame on living a better work life. And I think that she's right when she calls this book a big idea book, because it's really a provocation to completely redesign how we think about work.
Yeah, and she's developed an easy-to-follow, human-centered operating system that she calls MTR. Plus, Tim, she's got a playlist.
Oh, yeah. Music to live by.
Yeah, and she has built an actual Spotify playlist for moving, thinking, and resting, which is brilliant, and we'll link to it in our notes here.
So, Kurt, when was the last time you read a business book with a soundtrack?
Well, I've had soundtracks on the back of the business book, but never one that specifically came with one before.
Yeah.
And that's what makes this conversation, I think, really special. She's not just telling us to work differently. She's showing us how we can be more human in our work, from her electric bike adventures to the very specific matcha latte formula. And she's walking the walk.
Boom, chick. All right, listeners. What you're about to hear is a masterclass in reframing, from how we navigate ambiguity to why your next breakthrough might come while you're unloading the dishwasher. Who knows?
Yeah. So grab a matcha latte. I can never pronounce that. Or coffee or whatever gets you going, for you, Tim. I don't know. That could be a Coke Zero. Find a comfortable spot and get ready to rethink everything that you thought you knew about creativity and productivity as we sit back and enjoy our conversation with Dr. Natalie Nixon.
Natalie Nixon, welcome to Behavioral Grooves.
Thank you so much. It's great to be here.
It's wonderful to have you here. Thank you for joining us from on the road. Oh man, we know what that's like. So from a hotel somewhere and somewhere. Thank you. Okay, first speed round question. Would you prefer to ride a bicycle or a unicycle?
Bicycle.
Bicycle. Very quick in answering that.
Well, I own an electric pedal assist bike, which I adore. I love it. I run it like almost every day.
Oh man,
I hear great reviews from everybody who has one of them. So okay,
they're incredible.
Yeah, it just make it fun to get outside, right? And then all of a sudden
And
you're going
do
like,
errands
really?
and grocery shopping, and it's wonderful.
All right. Natalie, second of our speed round questions. Are you a coffee person or a tea person, or are you something totally other?
Hot oat milk matcha latte with honey. I love matcha. And oat milk is very important. I can't eat dairy, cheese, or milk.
Okay.
So plant cheeses and milk.
So the matcha is, I mean, I have tried matcha once, I think, and I'm like going, is this an acquired taste? Is it something that
you may not have had it strong enough? It might have been a bit too weak. I actually like it a bit more potent when you can really. I mean, it's ground green tea, you know.
Yeah.
And for me, the oat milk is just a wonderful way to thicken it a bit, and it's just a nice treat in the morning.
Yeah.
You do have kind of a formula, it sounds like.
I do.
Yeah, there's a way to do it and a way not to do it.
In my humble opinion. Yeah. And we all know how humble that
is. Okay, fair enough. All right, third speed run question is get out and take a walk. Good advice for just about everybody.
Yes. One of the chapters in Move, Think, Rest, I think it's the Move chapter, I quote St. Augustine, who apparently said, "It is solved by walking."
Yeah.
I love that.
And we will get into more of that as we go. But before we get there, we have one last speed round question. And this one is an agree or disagree with this. And we can then talk about my 15-year-old child on this one. So agree or disagree, boredom can be a friend of creativity.
Agree.
Agree. Okay. Can you talk to my kid? That's
Well, listen, you can give your kid the quip that my mother would give us when we said, "Mommy, I'm bored." She would say, "Only boring people get bored."
I love that. All right, I'm going to write that down. Well, I will forget that. There you go.
Works.
Perfect. All right. Well, we're talking.
It was a low key insult. She's great at that. She's great at that. She's 85 and she's still really good at that.
She's still really good at it. Well, I'm from the Midwest where that's exactly how we parent. So there you go.
She's from Pittsburgh. There you go.
That's it. It's the humble, like kind of all right, but no, you're actually really digging at me there. Yeah, aren't you? Yeah. Okay. Yeah, got it.
Okay, I'm not going to go there. We are talking with Dr. Natalie Nixon about her new book, Move, Think, Rest. It's the MTR model. It's Move, Think, Rest is the MTR model. We're going to talk about that quite a bit. So I just want to set that up for listeners. Can you start out by telling us why these three components were so important to write about? Why these?
Well, they are the highly misunderstood and underappreciated dimensions of A, what makes us human, and B, what makes our work much more dynamic. And as I work with a lot of leaders and a lot of C-suite folks who are highly accomplished and got to where they are by knowing the right answer, what is the solution, and really not only did, but kind of had to buy into that hustle and grind culture. A lot of what I end up doing is offering people very counterintuitive ways to think about their current approaches to help them reframe. So it's no surprise that I eventually landed on, what I call the motor framework or Move, Think, Rest to help people counterintuitively rethink how they might arrive at their best work.
Yeah, and I think it's really fascinating because we don't normally think about, all right, if I'm trying to be creative in different things, thinking that makes sense, right? But the other two components that kind of surround it are not necessarily those things that we go, oh, this is how I would go about doing that. So was this something that you, was this an intuitive kind of thought for you that you then went and did the research? Was it research driven first? How did you come about getting to those three components of it?
It was really intuitive driven, which a lot of my I'm a frameworks nerd, so a lot of my
Okay.
frameworks they start out with this self reflexivity, reflecting on how I'm going about my own work, and then following this nudge, following the breadcrumbs, and then and then exploring the research behind these intuitive questions that begin to emerge for me, and even the thinking part. The way I am exploring thinking to help us be more creative, be more innovative, is not just cognitive rational thought. The thinking dimension, I'm really talking about the value of backcasting and forecasting. The movement part, I'm not just talking about go out and exercise. Yes, exercise is important, but exercise is also a bit of a triggering word for some of us. Like, for example, I don't personally like gyms. And so it's really about leaning into what I call movement hygiene. And
Okay.
then the rest part, what I'm not saying is like every corporate building should have a nap room. That's your jam. If that makes sense for your work culture, cool. But what I'm really talking about is intermittent rest and scaling rest. So thinking about rest in terms of micro breaks throughout a day, but also thinking about rest in terms of sabbatical, and not just in the academic realm. But I interviewed almost 60 people for this book, and so a lot of tech companies offer the option to take sabbatical after 5 years, and even nonprofits. Some people who work in nonprofits. I interviewed. So the framework is about backcasting, forecasting, movement hygiene, and intermittent rest. And I absolutely came upon it because I hit my own burnout wall when I was an academic. So that was kind of the first personal data point. And then after I retired from academia, was building my business full time as an entrepreneur. Those of us who are solopreneurs, you have to become very self aware about taking care of yourself and making sure you do your best work, and designing your own guardrails. And I was just noticing that when I thought I was procrastinating and I would step away to unload the dishwasher or go for a 5 minute walk, when I would come back to the work at hand, my thinking was sharper, it was clearer. Something that had stymied me just began to click together. And so those were the intuitive moments that caused me to explore further. Maybe there's something to this.
Well, you started that answer, and I felt like we were in an intervention. Hi, I'm Natalie. I'm a model nerd, but you answered that beautifully. And before we went live, you were talking about how this is a big idea book. Can you tell? And it really is. And I think you also just sort of teed up how nuanced some of your messages are. But can you say why you think it's a big idea book?
I think it's a big idea book because we are at an inflection point where we have unprecedented burnout.
Mm-hmm.
We have ubiquitous technology, and we have new rules for working. And the new rules for working are in terms of space and the space and time dimension, in terms of where we do our work, but also how we're spending our time. And we also are at a point where generationally, we've got at least four generations working. Well, let's see, Gen X. Sorry, we go back up. We've got Gen Z, millennials, Gen Xers, and maybe a tail end of boomers, right? So we've got this intersection of a lot happening, and because of that, we actually can pause and rethink how we're going about work, because we actually can. So, for example, if the COVID pandemic had happened in 1982, it would have been a very different impact on work and society, because we didn't have Zoom and Teams and Skype and all those sorts of things to fill in the ways that we work. So when I say we were at a really interesting moment in time where we actually have technology that can do basic tasks, and some of the research I was doing, I went all the way back to even look at where do our current ideas and mythologies and stories we tell ourselves about productivity come from. It's really rooted in the first industrial revolution.
Yeah.
And God bless Frederick Winslow Taylor, who was actually a very creative person.
Yeah.
He was really into, measuring every single motion on the assembly line, because that was like this incredible revolution of work. And the first industrial revolution it created a culture of work that was about speed, output, efficiencies. You measure what you can see. Oftentimes, humans became a casualty because humans became mechanized in the process. And so we've carried that model forward, even though GDP, gross domestic product, does not measure things like search engines. It doesn't measure email. It doesn't measure like two of the major things that in a knowledge economy, we're using all the time to get work done. So the big idea that I'm introducing is the following question. What if instead of asking, how might I be more productive this week? How might my team be more productive this quarter? We asked, what might I cultivate this week? What might my team cultivate this quarter? And cultivation, I lobbed onto that word because before the first industrial revolution, as I was exploring this idea, I was learning that most societies around the world were agricultural based economies, where cultivation is the MO. And cultivation is a both and model. It values the solo practitioner and the collective. It values speed, but also slow. And it acknowledges that, yeah, we should measure what we can see, but also there's a lot going on during dormancy and when we need to sleep on it and when we need to let things marinate. So that's, and I realize that Wall Street may not be very
Nope.
keen to embrace this right away. However, the technology actually can allow us to work very differently. I really believe we are in the middle of a human revolution, not a tech revolution. The tech is a lever to help us amplify what makes us uniquely human.
Yeah. So Natalie, I don't know if you can see the big grin on Tim's face or not.
I do.
But what you just said has been a multitude of conversations that Tim and I have had between ourselves, with other guests, different pieces. But this whole first industrial revolution and the agricultural society before, Tim has been a big proponent of almost exactly what you were just saying. So
tell me more,
you have
Tim.
touched his heart, I can tell.
Okay,
There
good.
you go.
Well, you just talked about some of the most salient things about humans being casualties. It also disconnected work from home because of this big agricultural world. We all worked from home. Everything was a cottage industry. And then Frederick Taylor comes along and says, no, let's set up a factory where we got all these people working together that created working away from home and commutes and all kinds of problems that go along with that. Oh, Natalie,
it's really not his fault. I get it. He was following
he studied
his
this. Yeah.
He studied it. And but when you think, if you love, like my husband loves history. I'm not a big history buff, but I really acknowledge the value in understanding history and understanding the antecedents of why we're here.
It makes sense. Yeah.
And the first industrial revolution changed transportation, whether it spawned thinking about new ways to move. It changed the way families interacted. It changed the role of the church in a society where religion was like the OG of everything in the church, right? So what's fascinating is that when we were all reckoning with the COVID pandemic, our commutes shortened, right?
Yeah.
Because once upon a time, we woke up in the morning, we did our ablutions, we had a bit to eat, we stepped over the threshold, and we were at work. And now,
right.
Not all of us, right? But some of us are still experiencing that. So we're actually kind of coming full circle, but we can do it in a slightly different way.
Yes, I think that's fantastic. Hey Groovers, we want to take a moment away from our conversation to thank you for listening to Behavioral Grooves. If you enjoy the conversations we're having and want to help us keep the groove going, here are a few simple ways that you can support the show.
First off, subscribing to our Substack is a great way to stay connected with us between episodes. The weekly newsletter provides you with cool insights that are beyond the episodes, and they get delivered straight to your inbox.
And if you haven't already, leaving a review or a rating of the podcast on a platform like Apple or Spotify or YouTube helps other curious minds discover us. And there's two great things about that. One, it gives us a boost, and two, it costs nothing.
And it only takes a second, but it makes a huge difference for us. Plus, we love hearing from you, so don't be shy. Leave us a review or give us a quick thumbs up.
We're coming up on 500 episodes, and we're doing this because we love the conversations we have with our guests.
Yeah, we also want to do it because we love bringing you insightful, behavior-changing content every week, and we hope that some of those insights will help you find your groove.
So you talked a lot about movement hygiene, and I want to go back to the speed round question where we talked about going for a walk, right? So tell us a little bit about movement hygiene and why going for a walk is so important, or why it's important from that perspective.
Yeah, so as humans, we are designed to move. We are not designed to be sedentary. The spinal cord is an extension of the brain. It's an extension of the medulla oblongata at the base of the brain. When I was in high school, I loved biology. I actually thought I wanted to be a doctor. Then I realized in dissection classes I could not handle blood. But I love human physiology. It's magical. And I used to love that word. Those two words, medulla oblongata, is just a really cool.
It's fantastic.
It's a cool sound.
Sounds great. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's at the base of the brain, and the spinal cord is an extension of the medulla oblongata. But what happens when we are sedentary and we're hunched over this laptop, we are constricting blood flow up to the brain, which means we actually are reducing the supply of oxygen to the brain, which actually means our best thinking is not happening, and we're not doing our best work. So movement hygiene is really about making sure that we kind of choose our own adventure in terms of how we are moving in space. So standing periodically, and I don't have a standing desk, but I have this contraption that I can put on top of my desk, and it can go up and down on my laptop on top if I want to stand. Taking short walks, and a lot of the reason people aren't walking more during the day is because they think, a walk has to be 30 minutes long or has to be an hour long. It does not. I have walks that I know will only take 3 minutes. It might be up and down the driveway around the house. A walk that takes 5 minutes, one that takes 11 minutes. So depending on the budget of time that I have available, that's what I allow myself to do. And I have to force myself to step away from the laptop, because you get engrossed in work. Say, just one more email. But when my timer goes off, I make myself stand up and do that. And so what's happening is that you actually are reducing cortisol. You're allowing those yummy positive hormones to be released, like serotonin and dopamine and endorphins when you move, which actually helps with different neurosynapses in the brain to function, so that you can have this synchronicity of ideas. Now, at the same time, I am astutely aware that not everyone lives in an environment or works in an environment where they can just get up and go for a walk. So the socioeconomic differences and impact that different communities have is important to deal with, which I attempted to do in the book. And I also understand that people who are living with physical disabilities have a very different set of constraints. However, I interviewed an incredible person named Tyler Turner, who is a Paralympiad. He is a I want to get this from. He does like snow sports. He's incredible. He does like snowboarding, and he actually became paralyzed after a skydiving accident. And you know what he does today? He teaches skydiving. He's just incredible.
Yeah.
But in our interview, he said, I have to do legs off days, because if I don't do days where I remove the prosthetics and allow my skin to breathe, and just give my body a rest, because there's a lot of other pressure his body has to go through in order to be ambulatory with the prosthetics. I'll get abrasions, I'll get, other bad things will happen. And I thought, wow, what if more of us had legs off days? What if more of us were paying attention to our body in the ways that he is super conscientious about, because of living with this physical disability, that made us pay attention more to when we need to move and then when we need to rest or move in a different way.
Okay, Captain Discipline. I love the fact that you set a timer and actually say, "Okay, I'm going to move," and then you do, and that you actually do it. Bravo to you! You are an inspiration to me there, because I get the timer on my watch and says you should move, and I'm like, well, maybe.
But I think that goes into an interesting part of this, right? Because a lot of us, Tim and me both, on this, it's like, I know I should get up and move and I should be doing different pieces of this, but you have incorporated it in and have done it. We have some friends, some other colleagues that we work with, who have all of their one-on-one meetings as much as possible as walking meetings.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
Smart.
it's like, yeah. So how do you get people like Tim and me, who will
just for
hear
instance
the buzzer and go, yeah, but help us help ourselves here.
Well, two ways. One is to approach a new way of doing something as a prototype, and don't throw the baby out the bathwater. You don't have to do every single meeting as a walking meeting, but choose one. Start small. Choose just one meeting this next week.
Yeah.
Just one, not every single day, but just one during the 5-day work week, where you'll not meet on video. You will just take the not even the old-fashioned phone, but your smartphone device, and walk and talk, right? So that's one way to ease into it, to treat it as an experiment. I call it the baby food method. You break it up into small bits, and little by little, you try. So that's so one is to prototype these new behaviors. The second is to paint a picture for yourself of the pain that will result if you don't do this, which is part of what the book is trying to do, I guess, in a low-key way, is to paint a picture of the pain if we don't change our behaviors, right? That you actually are restricting blood flow to the brain. You actually are not doing your best thinking. You'll be counterproductive. It's actually amazing how much we can get done in a short amount of time. I like to I have a lot of little expressions I like to say. One is that creativity loves constraints. It loves constraints on time. It loves constraints on budget. It loves constraints on people talent. And so you would be amazed at what you can get done in even a shorter amount of time after you've had this refresh. So painting a picture of the pain, and then that's education, and then also educating yourself on how habits get formed, the ways habits get formed. And Charles Duhigg is, his work on habits was always very helpful. But habits are a feedback loop, and they need a reward. And that's whether it's a bad habit like a drug addiction, or it's a great habit like you exercise regularly. And so there has to be a reward, and some sort of, and that creates the incentivization to feel that again. So for example, when I was a professor, I used to swim probably like 3 mornings a week, and I would sometimes be, depending on my schedule for the day, I would get out of the bed at 5:30 in the morning. And I live in Philadelphia, and the mid-Atlantic region of the States, in the fall, winter time, when those dark mornings start to happen, it's like, oh, I do not want to get out of bed now, and it's cold. And actually, I was reading Duhigg's book around that time, and what I learned from that, I realized what was getting me out of the bed is that I treated myself to these wonderful, luxurious lotions and potions and perfume that I would put on after I swam and showered. And that was because I love perfume. So that's my jam. So that was the reward that actually, for me, it worked. It was something that I looked forward to. And also, you feel so good after a swim. Swimming simultaneously calms you down and rejuvenates you. So it was a combination of that feeling and that treat. And it wasn't just like CVS Jergens lotion. I was using like really nice lotions and, whatever your treat is going to be, that is how habits can be cultivated, and you can ingrain that feedback loop. So, paint a picture of the pain, prototype it, and understand what a habit is.
Yeah.
Apparently, we can cross CVS as a potential sponsor off the list right now.
Oh no,
that's okay, because Natalie, I know exactly maybe not exactly the ones, but my wife is a big lotion person too, and I'm like, okay, this little tube costs $35. Are you?
Oh yeah,
it's like 2 ounces. I'd use that one
every time.
Yeah,
I
oh my
know,
gosh.
I know.
So, all right,
Natalie, we've had several conversations with guests over the years about ambiguity and uncertainty, and about how to lean into it. We love the way that you lean into it in your book. And can you give us your take on why ambiguity and uncertainty is something that we should embrace and not run away from?
Well, we should embrace it because it's not going anywhere. I mean, there's so much gray everywhere, and it's just interesting that we start out in primary school where play and exploration is about probing the gray and probing the unknown is accepted and is acceptable, and we understand that's how we figure stuff out. That's how little people figure things out. And then we slowly but surely cordon ourselves off to err more on the side of certainty. I used to serve on the board of a wonderful organization called Leadership and Design, and Carla Silver is the co-founder, and she loves to remind us, and I think that's one of their slogans, is be more curious than certain, right? So certainty is a bit of a faux pas, because we educate ourselves in a way to be more certain, but then we get out into work environments where there's so much ambiguity, there's so much gray, and it turns out we've got to be a lot better at question framing, at falling in love with the process. And I experienced in my own pathway of being educated from kindergarten through senior in high school, 3 very different sorts of educational environments that really visualize or they didn't even visualize, they pointed out these different modalities of learning, and even either accepting the ambiguity or fighting it. And so I started out in Crunchy Granola, kind of hippie Unitarian school, cooperative nursery school in Philly. And then I went to Philly Public School in the neighborhood from kindergarten through 3rd grade, where my parents got very frustrated with not such a great educational learning environment. And so my pop figured out that if we went to a neighboring, not even neighboring, but a school in a suburb of Philadelphia, they'd have to pay money to the county. But it was a much more rigorous type of educational process, because in the public school I started at, my mother was having to teach us multiplication tables. I was getting an attitude. She fought to get me into like the AP class in a school that was 90% Black. That those classes were mainly the minority white children, which even then I noticed, I was like, oh, this is weird. And then I went to suburban public school, which was predominantly white, where I experienced racial aggression, and but moved through that. But I was learning great, and I was an A student, and I was really good at completing the worksheets and getting the stars, and figuring out what the teacher wanted. And then I earned a scholarship to a private Quaker prep school in Philly. There's a lot of Quaker prep schools in Philadelphia. And where the culture of learning was so different. And my grades plummeted in 7th and 8th grade. And gradually picked them up by 9th grade, because I was just like, there was so much new. There were like sports with sticks, and there was a campus. Like, I didn't stay in the same classroom, and it was a culture of learning that valued asking for forgiveness rather than permission. So it was about, it didn't matter if you were wrong. It's like, oh, that's interesting. Let's explore that. And I wasn't used to that. I was like,
Right.
isn't it about just giving the right answer? Wait, and also the world does not come to a screeching halt.
And that totally screwed you up. That really
It screwed me up because I had been trained. So I remember I had a moment in about 9th or 10th grade where I realized my friends back on the block and the kids I was friends with from public school back there, we were learning to stay in our lane. We were being trained to just come up with the answer. And now I was in a learning environment where we were being educated to make up the lane. We were being educated to design what the lane might be. And I didn't have that language, but it was, and I couldn't quite articulate, but it was this moment where I realized these are two different systems. And so, if you have the privilege and the ability to be invited to fall in love with process and ambiguity, you actually are much further ahead because the ambiguity, as I just said, isn't going anywhere. So we really need to equip ourselves with tools to navigate that ambiguity so that we can figure out anything, you know. And so getting back to where does movement, thought, and rest have to do with that? Well, if you incorporate um, uh, modalities to help you reframe, which the ways I explore movement, thought, and rest to help you to do, then you will have a plethora of options before you for problem solving, for innovation, for collaboration, for figuring out what's next, for working with the technology, the AI, the robotics, the automation in ways that are really co-instigators with what you're trying to do.
Yeah. I love the question framing. I love the lane component of don't just stay in your lane, kind of think about it. It's just a wonderful way of putting this into perspective of the ambiguity and different things. At the beginning, when we were talking, you talked about forecasting and backcasting from that modality of thinking. Can you talk a little bit more about that and what you mean by those two components and how that fits into the larger model?
Yes, and I will couch this by saying I am a mighty daydreamer. So this is in defense of all of us who are great daydreamers.
Well, that was my next question was, what do you think about the thoughts on daydreaming? So here we go. We can answer both of them. There you go.
We can answer both of them. So the way I'm exploring thought is understanding that a lot of what's rewarded is come up with the answer, cognition, sharp thinking, analysis, which is very important. The ways that we get really crisp analysis and become great analytical thinkers and critical thinkers is actually, again, counterintuitively, is to engage in modes of thinking that might seem a little woo or seem superfluous to the important stuff. But the backcasting incorporates the role of memory, the role of reflection, the role of self-reflexivity, the role of metacognition. Why do I think the way that I think? Why are we thinking about this in the way that we are thinking? Why do we keep approaching in an XYZ way? That's backcasting. Forecasting is about curiosity. It's about dreaming. It's about daydreaming. It's about imagination. It's about inspiration, right? And we actually need to backcast and to forecast in order for our cognitive thought to be sharper, to be crisper, to be more analytical. If we think that it's only about, let's just use ChatGPT, for example. If it's only about inserting a question, getting an answer, and stopping right there, no, that's just the beginning point, right? And it's an aid to help spark thinking or figuring out a new approach or a new set of questions to explore. And then what, right? So when I say things like we're in the middle of a human revolution, not a tech revolution, all this technology is really challenging us to address our addiction to busyness, to really embrace pausing, because if we can get the answer so quickly, that really means we have time for spaciousness. It means we have time for eyeball to eyeball conversations. It means we have time to explore collaboration differently. It means that we can think more critically now about the answers that have been given us. We shouldn't stop there. We should push it and explore it further.
Wow. Speaking of time, I wish we had so much more time because this is such a wonderful conversation. But I have to turn the conversation over to one of the coolest parts of the book. We like to talk about music on behavioral groups.
Yay.
And the fact that you actually have a section in the book called the MTR Soundscape, you've got playlists identified for move, think, rest is absolutely fantastic. How and why? Why did you come up with, or why did you decide this deserves to have ink on paper about having a soundscape?
Well, I years ago went to a really cool conference called the Design and Emotion Society. I don't think it exists anymore. It was started by a group of Dutch cognitive scientists or social scientists, and it convened anthropologists, artists, psychologists, marketing experts, engineers. It was just
Oh
this
my
really
gosh.
very diverse group of experts who were looking at the intersection between design and emotion, and that really set me on this curiosity path to really be interested in the fact that we are sentient beings. We are incredibly sensorial, and there are certain senses that we don't tap into, in our particular culture at least, we don't tap into as much as we could. And so, as a lifelong dancer, music is kind of the medium that sparks movement in dance. And so, I love music. And in my own practice of getting better at movement, thought, and rest, music is a big part of that. So I developed these kind of just bare bones. There's probably like 10 or a dozen songs that there's a movement playlist, a thought playlist, and a rest playlist, and it's on Spotify. And I did it on Spotify because I hope this is true, that I wanted eventually people to add to the playlist. So I hope that it's designed in a way so that people can add to what are melodies or songs that help them to think more expansively or to be more reflective. What are melodies or songs that help them just to chill, to slow down, to rest, and what's music that really energizes them. So that, and also it's just fun, and play is a big part of this human-centered operating system to flourish called motor.
Can I just say that I was surprised? It's hard to bring it down to 8, right?
I know.
Okay. So I just respect for that. At the same time, in the think section, the Queen of Soul has like the greatest song called Think. And I was so
Oh, I
surprised
know.
not to see Aretha Franklin
but
on the list.
I guess
Tim, but
because
Natalie just said you can add to it. So
you can
now
add to it. You can add to
you
it.
can
So
go in. Yeah.
please add to it. Let's your listeners please go in. And I think on Spotify it's called, and this is important, there's a period after move and think and rest. So move period, think period, rest period, colon, move, and then move, think, rest, colon, think. And so it's 3 separate playlists. Please add to that. And I guess I was thinking more the rhythm. If we were to
Right.
I would debate, well, that could go in the movement section, movement playlist, because it's so peppy,
Yeah. It's got a great
But
groove.
please add it to think.
Yeah.
Okay.
I love it. I love it.
I'm sorry. We will put a link in the show notes, by the way.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Well, you also have, and I know Tim's talking about music and various different things, but you do have a lot of fun like activities. This is a very applicable book, and then you even have MTR Bingo, which I found I'm like going, oh, I like this. I can play a game. So you said it's playful and various different things, and I think that's one of the great things about the book and about even just thinking. We had asked earlier, how do we incorporate this? How do we make sure that we're doing these? And those are, I think what you have done is help people with, all right, it's great theoretically, but now let's get this down into, let's do this stuff and not just talk about it.
Now what? Yeah. And actually, so the bingo game is just a fun way to like ticking off throughout the day. Am I doing like 5 of these things, right?
Yeah.
But that also, I'm glad. First of all, thank you for the feedback, and I'm glad you find the book actionable, because that is a goal. But that, before we started recording, I was sharing how this framework, the Move, Think, Rest framework, is one more set of tools to serve as an on-ramp to help people build creativity as a strategic competency. And the way I think about creativity in my work, in my practice, is that I call it the wonder rigor theory, that it's our ability to toggle between wonder and rigor to solve problems and deliver novel value. So the wonder is maybe the theory of these ideas. Oh, this sounds nice. Okay, it's helping me to think differently about my work. But the rigor is make it real. And so that's why the chapters end with reflection questions, exercises. The appendix has very useful ways to think about putting these concepts into action for teams, organizations, and for individuals.
We like to also talk about how people find their groove, how people stay in their groove. And Natalie, we're interested in how you, as Captain Discipline, and having all this fantastic insight, how do you stay in your groove?
I stay in my groove through dancing and through swimming. So I'm a very kinesthetic learner. I love to move and tinker in order to figure things out. Dance is, I'm not a professional dancer, but I'm a lifelong dancer. I started studying when I was 4. I'm now a student of ballroom dance. I do a lot of hip hop dance. And dance allows me, the hip hop dance studio that I go to in my community is called Dance Fit. I reference it in the book, and their tagline is "Disguise your exercise," which is brilliant because you really are disguising your exercise. But dance also allows me to try on different avatars and personas. I can be sassy, I can be sultry, I can be hard, I can be aggressive, I can be whimsical. And so that again, going back to my dumbed down version of the neuroscience of all of this, it's activating different neurosynapses in my brain, different mindsets for me, so that I begin to normalize that. And so then when I return to the work at hand, it's a lot easier for me to be bolder in my thinking, to be reflective in my thinking. It also is activating serotonin and dopamine and all those things. And then swimming, not only do I swim in a pool, not all the time, but I discovered in 2023 that I love open water swimming. And I did not swim competitively growing up. On an invitation from a friend, I tried out a swim holiday with a company called Swim Trek in Greece. And while my first time out was a bit calamitous because I had a panic attack, I had never seen all these arms and legs around me. Once I just got out of my head and into my body and just swam long, slow, extended strokes, it was life-changing. It was a way for me to be a clumsy student of something, to enjoy nature, to achieve things I never would have thought I could achieve. For example, I swam from the island of Nevis to the island of St. Kitts last November.
Wow.
Kind of accidentally, but that's another story. The shortest part of that crossing should be 4K. It took me and my swimming buddy 5K, but I would have never thought I could do something like that. And so on my worst days, I'm thinking, I swam from Nevis to St. Kitts. I can do this.
And you didn't get eaten by barracuda or sharks or anything.
I did not.
That's so cool.
I did not. And it's safety first. There's a boat kind of shadowing you. You're always at least pairs or a trio of other swimmers. You're not just out there in the sea. But it was just life changing. So that's how I find my groove. I read a lot. I try to read as much fiction as possible because for my work I read a lot of nonfiction. But fiction just is relaxing.
Yeah,
it's just, since I was a child, that is love and contentment to me, just to curl up with a good book.
Yeah. Natalie, thank you so much for being a guest on Behavioral Grooves. I think the insights that we talked about today are just, and as Tim mentioned, if we had more time, we could go on and talk about a whole bunch of other stuff, but we'll have to have you back at some point. But we
thank
really
you so much for having
me.
You guys I love your curiosity and your interest in my work, and I appreciate you sharing your platform. So thank you.
Thank you. Welcome to our grooving session where Tim and I share ideas on what we learned from our discussion with Natalie, have a free-flowing conversation, and groove on whatever else comes into our taking a walk brains.
Oh, I like that. Yeah. I like that because, I grew up in a world where I did a lot of walking. I grew up on a farm and there was just always places to walk. And I don't know, you could grow up in a neighborhood and walk everywhere you want to go too, I suppose. But I like
we've
walking.
talked about this. I don't know if we've talked about it in the show. I know we've talked about it in other times. The number of behavioral scientists who talk about they took a walk with somebody to discuss this. You and George Lowenstein, right? When you did work with him, what did you do?
We always went for a walk, rain or shine. Didn't matter whether it was, we're getting out and we're walking, and whatever we had to talk about would be talked about during the walk.
There's something about that walking and either, sharing that walk with somebody else or even just being on your own in that walk where your brain, that movement part of it, the, being outside part of it, it all coalesces into something that brings greater clarity, creativity, a number of factors that I don't think we take advantage of enough. And we should be doing it more. That's my public service announcement to the world. Go out and take a walk, particularly if you have to think or have a conversation with somebody about big ideas.
Well, this goes back a long time. St. Augustine was, in the 2nd century, was big on solving problems by walking. My guess is that Marcus Aurelius, and I think that we could probably go to the Stoics and find some evidence of walking and solving problems. Kahneman and Tversky, Richard Thaler, like they wrote extensively.
The Stoics all the way up to the 1970s.
Well, I don't have a lot of medieval examples,
but you couldn't even do like Abe Lincoln or George Washington. You come, hey, there you go. All right, yes, I think you're absolutely true. I don't think this is something that we've just identified. That's groundbreaking.
It's a new discovery. Get out and walk.
Yeah. So
no.
All right, what do you want to groove on with our conversation from Natalie?
I want to talk about ambiguity. I want to talk about ambiguity is your friend.
Oh, I want to get really clear on this. So what are we talking about?
This idea that life is changing constantly and that we can reframe the world from just stay in your lane to build your own lane. And I really like Natalie's idea about this. I'm just so enthusiastic we've had a lot of conversations about ambiguity. Debbie Sutherland talked about it, Elizabeth Weingarten, Julia DeGangi, Annie Duke, Nathan and Susanna Furr, possibly our favorite discussion on ambiguity and uncertainty, right? I mean, there is so much rich content that has got me rethinking over the years about life is constantly changing. We never know what's going to happen next. We don't know. So why not just embrace it? Why not just go, okay, it's here. Let's figure it out.
This idea that we live in an ambiguous world and that uncertainty is a state of nature, and yet we're so often focused in on finding the certainty. And I also love this idea, like the way that that Natalie talks about ambiguity is that it's about not getting into the lane that's been prescribed for you. It's about creating your own lane. That's what she talks about, how good education teaches people to make up the lane rather than just stay in their lanes. And I think that message is key. Now, it's scary getting out of the lane that's there because this is the lane. I know exactly where the boundaries are. If there's lines on either side, and if I stay in there, it's going to be a good. I'm safe. You make your own lane, and you go, as I always talk about when I started my business, was this long, clear path highway going down to these cool mountains way down in the distance. But there was like this little dirt path I could take, and I just took a right turn and went down in the ditch, and I didn't know where it led because I couldn't see. And there wasn't there wasn't a path after, I had to form that path, and that was uncertain in different pieces.
Yeah. Where does innovation come from? Uncertainty. Where does any kind of creativity come from? Uncertainty and ambiguity. It is that's where the space of possibilities exists in the world. So I think Natalie, I just so enjoyed our conversation. Like I think she frames this really, really well.
And you liked it because there was this metacognition kind of component going on with it. There was a little bit of a philosophical bent that you just love, right? This idea of like, why do we think the way that we think? Why do I think the way that I think, right? Yeah.
Well, you like metacognition too, right?
I do. That's true.
Like it's pretty fantastic. It's the connective tissue in some ways between our system 1 thinking and our system 2 thinking. It's like what bridges that instant reflexive stuff with wait a minute, I could be thoughtful about this. And when we embrace that metacognition, I think that it allows us to engage in what Natalie is encouraging us to do, to embrace that ambiguity.
I will also go back to what we talked about at the beginning of this, is like the movement, the walking, I loved Natalie's way that she framed it in the book and also in our conversation, but this is as movement hygiene, that it's not a nice to, it's like hygiene. You have to, we need to do this every day. It's not a component of, I'd like to do it. It is something there. And it's not about gym membership. It's not bulking up and running a marathon. It's movement. It is making sure you're not sitting like you and I are both doing right now, sitting in our chairs for 8 hours a day. And only time we get up is, to go to the bathroom or to go get, food. Right?
Who says I have to get up to do that?
I don't want to know. I do not. Thank God we're not in the same room. All right. Okay.
But how many times do we constrict ourselves by saying, I don't have 30 minutes to get, or I don't have an hour to get to the gym.
Right.
Or
I don't even have 30 minutes, right?
Or I don't have 30 minutes. Yeah.
And the idea of like saying, I can do a 10-minute walk. This is a standing desk. I can lift it up. I can be standing. I can do a little dance in my office here. Nobody know better. I can turn some music on and just do something, right?
Let that daydreaming get into your brain for just a minute and get exposed to other images so that your unconscious can start doing some of the work that it needs to do on the really important stuff. Yeah.
All right.
Okay.
So I know that you really like this idea of reframing.
I do.
This idea of how we frame our thought patterns and different things. So did you want to get into some practical reframes?
I did. I thought about, I would love to, because I have some specific examples on an individual level and on a team level and on an organizational level. And so I was wondering if I throw you some things that might be constrictive. Okay, exactly. Roll up your sleeves.
Roll my sleeves up here. Yeah. Getting ready to jar with you.
So I'm going to throw some things at you and give me some reframes on them. Okay. So how about am I productive? When the voice in the back
frame
of my
in
head,
your head.
The frame in my head is questioning my productivity. Am I productive? I don't know. How can I reframe that?
So let's think. You could frame that as, instead of am I productive, busy away, am I flourishing? Am I thriving? Am I in my groove?
Ooh, I like that. Okay.
There you go.
Okay. How about if I'm going for something very finite, like I need to find the answer and I'm not finding it. And so of course that becomes a roadblock for me because I'm not finding the answer. How can
am I asking the right question? Can I find a better question to this situation? Am I looking at the situation from all angles? There you go.
I like those. Okay. How about when the self-talk is I'm just bored. I'm not bored. I'm at the end of the day and I'm tired and I say my ideas don't matter. How could I reframe that?
thinking about what can I do to be more in my groove? What can I do to be more intentional about what I want to accomplish in these final minutes of the day? That my ideas might spur other ideas that matter. So if I'm feeling like I'm not mattering, like they're not mattering right now, that doesn't mean that they won't have some implication further on. So
Ah,
what is it that I want to do in the long term? How are these any minor steps to getting to where I need to be? And
I like that.
you get, yeah. All right.
Because it's steps, and the existing ideas might actually be stepping stones to get me somewhere. So that's kind of what you're saying. Okay. On a team level, let's move to a team level. How should I go from again, this is at a team level, thinking about how do I help get the team from a grind to a groove? How can I
So, well,
reframe that?
that I think is a good frame, don't you think?
Yeah, I
I mean,
guess
it's not a bad frame. Yeah, I want to frame it as going from a grind to the groove.
rather
And
than just
so,
being stuck in the grind. Right.
right, like we're stuck in the grind. Well, let's figure out ways to set up the environment in order to make sure that as individuals and as team members, we are more likely to be in the groove. We've talked to a number of people about this right now, about setting up those rhythms, putting in good
Mm.
processes, making sure that you're not, if you're a leader, that you're not micromanaging. So there are ways of doing that, but the framing is how, like, all right, we just have to be productive and different things. No, this is about, we need to get people in the groove. We need to make sure that we give them rest periods, like we've talked, like Natalie was talking
Yeah.
about various different things. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, I like that. Okay, what about if you're in the meeting and some manager of another department basically kind of gives you that message of just stay in your lane? How
Ah,
how how can you reframe that for yourself?
this has never happened, has it? I've
Right.
actually, it's interesting. I've had conversations where it's been like, well, that's not our it's not what we do. We don't work on that here. We
That's not the
can't
way we
go
do it
in
here.
that lane, right? And so again, think about this. Let's all right, stay in your lane. Well, let's figure out what road we can go down together. Let's have that conversation with somebody. Let's design the road together. Um, are there ways that we can work that allow us to get to the end zone, or that mountain, whatever our destination is, that are going to be beneficial for both of us? Not your lane, not my lane, our lane.
Our lane. I like that. Okay. And now we've talked about boredom with Aaron Westgate, right? But what about team members who feel like, oh man, this project that we're working in, it's a waste of time? How can you
So
help reframe that?
again, thinking about, what do you mean by waste of time? What is it that is causing that waste of time? Can we learn? So, and again, if I'm thinking, like, if I'm an individual and it's like, oh my God, I'm just doing the same thing over and over again. Well, what can I learn from it? We talked about this, I think, as you're driving the same path every day to
Oh,
work,
yeah.
can
Mhm.
be boring. Like, it's a waste of time. It takes me 20 minutes to get there. How can I reframe that? What can I observe on a new basis? What can I look at? What can I think about? Can I put on podcast, or can I do something in that time where I can shift that from being a waste of time to a learning opportunity? Maybe the same thing with, you know, a project or whatever that would be.
It could very well be that. Okay. On an organizational level, I didn't really have a reframe because so rarely do we have a lot of control over the organization, especially the culture, even though I buy into Christina Bicchieri's idea that, we're all part of the norm. So something that we do is influencing the culture at work. Of course that happens. But But I think at an organizational level that we could think about rest and periods of low productivity not so much as overhead, but as R&D. Now, people who are just slacking off and not doing their job, I have very little patience for that.
I'm
That's
sorry.
not what
I'm sorry. You can.
Your apologies are not accepted. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about we've talked to managers who make sure that their people are not scheduled on the tasks that they have to do for more than like 90, 80, 85, 90% of the time, so that there's a little bit of buffer. And I think that that's really an important thing to think about, this idea of maybe a low productivity time could be R&D, not
Right.
just overhead.
That's what I'm doing, Tim, by the way. So when I'm not working on this stuff, it's R&D in my head. And,
Right.
it's not that I'm slacking. Right. But in all seriousness, I think you're absolutely right. There is this aspect where we can, instead of trying to make sure that everybody is 100% productivity 100% of the time, that there's no downtime. No, downtime is important. Break time to connect with peers, time to laugh, to share. The coffee break was invented for a reason, right? It actually increased productivity. You took 10, 15 minutes off to have some coffee, to share some thoughts with friends, and you came back more productive. That's what they found. That's why those were implemented. It wasn't anything else. I think there's also another reframe that organizations could do, and that is looking again from our conversation with Natalie, is this ambiguity position where we're always so afraid of it as an organization that we need to have clarity. No, ambiguity navigation is a core competency. And so people who are good with ambiguity, maybe we should be hiring those people. Maybe we need to be bringing more of those people into the organization, particularly as I think our world is just becoming more and more ambiguous and changing faster and faster. We don't have those year of runways where the world is pretty consistent. I mean, it's changing, daily, if not hourly. So,
I'm just going to say the word. I don't want to say the word, but I'm just going to say the word. AI is changing our world and our life dramatically all the time, right? And so, being able to navigate that world of ambiguity, of we don't know what's coming with it, I think that's actually a great thing.
Yeah.
What else?
I think we should wrap. I think we can wrap this in this idea that, hey, look, we're living in a world that's drowning in answers, and sometimes we just have to ask better questions. So,
yeah, right. Because the real revolution isn't finding answers faster. We've got that at our fingertips, right? But it might be discovering which questions are worth asking. And I think, kind of getting back to Natalie's mother, only boring people get bored, not relating to the way Aaron Westgate talked about it, but
right,
or George Lowenstein, but maybe we should just add, only uncreative people accept the first answer.
I love that. I love that.
Let's just,
Mr. Houlihan, you came through. Look at that. I like that.
Keep probing.
Only uncreative people accept the first answer at face value. I love it. There you go. Let's do this. Let's do something new.
Okay.
All right. Let's challenge our listeners out there. We're going to call this our Groove Challenge. Maybe we'll add it in to our Facebook community group so you can join in there if you haven't already joined in. But, so here's the first Groove Challenge that we're doing. For 1 week, before answering any question, ask yourself, what lane am I assuming exists here? What would happen if I designed a new one? Or maybe the question is, what is the second answer that I need to find? Right? Like, I'm not going to just, here's the answer. Let me look and see if is there a different answer to this? If I look at it from a different perspective, does it give me a new perspective that provides a different result?
Or a different question, even possibly. Yeah. Okay, so with that, Groovers, We hope that you take this groove challenge and you take some of Natalie's ideas that she talked about, and that you use them this week as you go out and find your groove.